rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ever-mighty and everlasting God, who presides over all things in heaven and earth, come and preside over these deliberations so that those that make the decisions may be guided by your wisdom.
Thank you. Good evening. This is the work session of City Council for November 19th. It'll be followed by the regular session of Council. At this particular time, we are not taking incoming calls. Again, this is the work session. We will advise you when we will be able to take calls for both for the agenda items and non-agenda items after that. Jim, here's.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council's agenda. The first resolution is authorizing the execution and delivery of certain financing documents with Pension Funding Solutions, LLC, or such other entity as may be deemed appropriate for the purpose of funding all or a portion of the city's unfunded actuarial accrued pension liability and authorizing proper officers to do all other things necessary or appropriate in connection with the foregoing. Number 2 is authorizing the proper city officials to prepare and submit the necessary application to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, acting through the Commonwealth Financing Authority for the local share account, Luzerne County Program Funds, and that the mayor is hereby authorized to enter into the appropriate agreement with the CFA along with any or all other project documents related to the Shine LC project. Third resolution is authorizing the proper city officials to prepare and submit the necessary application to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, acting through the Commonwealth Financing Authority for the local share account, Luzerne County Program Funds, and that the mayor is hereby authorized to enter into the appropriate agreement with the CFA, along with any or all other project documents relating to LCTA's new transit facility project. Fourth is authorizing the proper city officials to prepare and submit the necessary application to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, acting through the Commonwealth Financing Authority for the local share account, Luzerne County Program Funds, and that the mayor is hereby authorized to enter into the appropriate agreement with the CFA along with any or all other project documents related to the Emergency Operations Center project. Fifth is authorizing the proper city officials to prepare and submit the necessary application to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, acting through the Commonwealth Financing Authority for the local share account, Luzerne County Program Funds, and that the mayor is hereby authorized to enter into the appropriate agreement with the CFA, along with any or all other project documents related to the City Hall renovations project.
Okay, questions on those? Okay, Mayor. Yes, sir.
Mayor.
Yeah.
Before you commence with your agenda items, if I may address the first item by way of clarification. The first item, which is listed on your agenda under resolutions, I'm going to give an explanation, which I checked with Charlie on prior to the meeting. So I believe I'm correct, but you correct me if I'm wrong. This was a resolution adopted by the aggregate board, and it's not a resolution of council requiring council's vote. This was intended as a resolution for adoption by, this was not intended as a resolution for adoption by council, but was intended to be read into the record as a show of support by the aggregate pension board to the longstanding dilemma of how to shore up and solidify the long-term funding of the city's pension plans. I will now read it into the record with your approval.
Please.
Okay. resolution. Again, this is a resolution of the aggregate pension fund. Be it resolved that the City of Wilkes-Barre's Aggregated Trust Fund Board hereby recommends that the City Council of the City of Wilkes-Barre adopt the Pension Funding Solutions LLC program for the benefit of the Aggregated Trust Fund and the City of Wilkes-Barre. The following board members voted yea: Michael McGrath, Jack Livingston, Charlie McCormick, Mayor George C. Brown, myself, Mark Lear, Brett Kittrick, and Darren Snyder. The following board members voted nay. So again, this is just a show of support by the aggregate board for the mayor's proposed solution to the funding of the pension funds. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, that's correct. We presented a review to the Aggregated Pension Board, and they unanimously felt that they would want City Council to know of their support. So they felt it was necessary to create a resolution that could be presented to City Council. So thank you, Jim, for doing that. Now, secondly, ordinance amending Section 12-27, Article 2 of Chapter 12, City of Wilkes-Barre Code of Ordinances entitled Garbage and Refuge, and amending Chapter 30 of the Wilkes-Barre City Code of Ordinances entitled Utilities, first reading. I also have 2 additional LSA applications. Once again, I'll read these in detail like I did 2 weeks ago with the other ones that I presented, so you'll have a good understanding that I'm not just trying to push this past you without an understanding of what it is. Whereas the establishment of Mohegan Sun Casino at Pocono Downs Casino has resulted in revenue from the facility allocated to a local share account, Luzerne County, administered by the Commonwealth Financing Authority, CFA. Whereas money in the account is available for distribution to municipalities in Luzerne County, whereas revenue in this account is designated to improve the quality of life of citizens in the City of Wilkes-Barre and other municipalities in Luzerne County. And whereas the City of Wilkes-Barre is desirous of applying for a $25,000 grant from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania acting through the CFA for the local share account Luzerne County Program Funds. The funding will be used to support the Wilkes-Barre YMCA's virtual programming enhancement project, including outfitting a recording studio, adding new camera systems, lighting, microphones to programming areas to reach people. In this way, the YMCA can provide virtual services promoting healthy living at home and combat senior isolation. And now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Wilkes-Barre that the proper city officials are hereby authorized to prepare and submit the necessary application to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, acting through the CFA, for the local share account Luzerne County Program Funds. And furthermore, that the mayor is hereby authorized to enter into the appropriate agreement with the CFA, along with any and all other project documents related to the Wilkes-Barre YMCA Virtual Programming Enhancement Project, if the application is approved. I'll now read the second one, as I always do with LSA applications. Whereas the establishment of Mohegan Sun Casinos at Pocono Downs has resulted in revenues from this facility allocated to a local share account, Luzerne County account, administered by the Commonwealth Financing Agency Authority, CFA, and whereas money in this account is available for distribution to municipalities in Luzerne County, and whereas revenue in this account is designated to improve the quality of life of citizens in the City of Wilkes-Barre and other municipalities in Luzerne County, and whereas the City of Wilkes-Barre is desirous of applying for a $375,000 grant from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, acting through the CFA, for the local share account Luzerne County Program Funds, the funding will be used by Sherman Street Properties, LLC, for improvements to their business center located at 221 North Sherman Street, formerly my brother's place in Wilkes-Barre. The work to be completed will consist of preparing a stormwater management plan, construction of stormwater retention basin and other required stormwater mitigation, along with paving of the parking lot area. Also, the project will rehabilitate a blighted property along North Sherman Street in the city. Upon completion of the project, 10 full-time jobs will be created initially, with the potential to create another 10 to 20 full-time jobs in the next 5 years. Sherman Street Properties, LLC, has already invested $1,500,000 into this project. The total cost of the project is $3 million.
This one. Yeah.
And now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Wilkes-Barre that the proper city officials are hereby authorized to prepare and submit the necessary applications to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, acting through the CFA, for a local share account, Luzerne County program funds, and further, that the mayor is hereby authorized to enter into the appropriate agreement with the CFA, along with any and all other project documents related to the Sherman Street Properties, LLC, Business Center Improvement Project, if the application is approved. That's the two new LSAs. I'd like to reiterate that once again, the other LSAs that you're going to vote on today are by no means a pet project of myself. They do not enhance my ego at all. They're not special projects. When you look at the projects like LCTA that will create 150 to 170 jobs, a $70 million investment in the city, earned income tax for all those new jobs, and permit fees, I don't see how that's a ego or a special project. The SHINE program, which was explained in detail 2 weeks ago to council for children that are underprivileged, once again, I'd ask you to look at voting for that also. We have a HVAC system that's going to need some repair and building upgrades. Once again, I'll remind you, there is no match for the LSA grants, and I believe Mrs. McBride said that there was, Mrs. McBride actually voted on 40 LSA applications in her 5 years on council, so I believe she should understand that there is no match. If I can continue, Mr. Barrett, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead, sir.
Okay. First of all, I do want to explain that when you're voting on tonight's budget, I understand that no one likes an increase in taxes or fees. No one likes a reduction in services either. Yes, I'm asking for an additional $1 a week for recycling and sewer. If we don't get that, there's no other way that I could see of making up the revenue loss that we've experienced this year. The other choice, and it's not really my choice, it's not your choice, but it's what's going to happen, have to cut expenses. And I believe Mr. Marconi, 2 weeks ago when you talked about your job at a local supermarket, you said, how do you cut expenses? You have to cut expenses when you're losing revenue. One of them is positions. Well, I'm going to have to cut positions. It's not something I want to do. I know $1 a week in some cases is maybe a lot of money to some people, and I'm looking at ways that we can hopefully help with that. We have a program that Mr. McCormick and myself are working on. It's too soon to announce it yet, but I think it's going to be a benefit to hopefully senior citizens and people that are being hurt by the COVID virus, but I can't tell you that right now because I don't want that to sway your decision in this budget. I don't have a lot I can offer yet, but we are working on something. But understand, $1 a week for both of those fees will offset the need to lay off people. And council, I want you to understand something. We're short people right now in DPW. And that's why today was a double collection. It was recyclables and garbage. And in the areas that we're supposed to collect it, we didn't collect everything. I have 8 people out today in the DPW department, either sick or COVID related. 8 people, and we can't pick up a normal pickup. We have a total of 7 other people that are out on COVID related issues. 1 is in isolation, 6 are in quarantine. It's not going to get any better. And if we do have to reduce staff, it's going to be even worse because I cannot provide the services you're getting now with less staff. I just want to be open and above board. Naturally, we're all looking at how do we cut money, how do we cut expenses in our budget, and you brought up some things, and I've asked Mr. McCormick and Mr. Fratty to meet with you that had some questions, and hopefully he did give an explanation to you where we can and can't cut. But I really have to make one exception here where I think a cut can be made, and that's in those of you that are taking health care benefits. Mrs. McBride, you're being compensated at $41,528 a year. And I know that you said you're giving back 10% of your salary. Well, you are giving back $1,300 a year in salary, but still, your total compensation and benefits is $41,528. I'm giving back $53,000 a year to the city in salary benefits. You're taking $41,528. So I'm looking at ways to cut. These are individual choices that you have, and I'm not going to have the authority to make any changes there. Mrs. McBride, you said that you're going to introduce a resolution to change the health care benefits for city council members in the new term. Well, the new term is 3 years away. And I know you can't do it during the term now, but people can do it voluntarily. And if we wait until the new term and it's continued the way it is, that's over $120,000 that we'll spend just on your family and yourself. So I'm asking people to think about that. I'm giving back. Other people are giving back. It's your individual choices. Thank you.
Questions, comments, for the mayor?
Just myself, just one thing, Mayor. Talking about where I work, I did not say to lay people off. What I did say was to do more with less. I just wanted to clarify that.
With less employees.
No, do more with less. That's all I have.
I'd like to make a comment. Just so the public is aware, I've said time and time again the reason why I literally had no other option but to take the city's healthcare coverage. I think that people who have worked for the city for a long time and haven't worked in the private sector don't fully appreciate the healthcare that the city offers. Just so the public knows, at this point in time, we don't have to pay anything towards our healthcare benefits. And I think that's something that needs to change in the future. It's not sustainable, and it's proven not to be sustainable. As far as my salary goes, I make a little over $11,000 a year plus my healthcare benefits. And that's really all I have to say about that. Mr. Mayor, I appreciate the cut that you took in your salary, but you were retired before this. So therefore, anything you make is extra for you. So I don't think it's fair that you put council down while acting like you're a hero. I don't think that's a way to get a budget passed, and I think that the fundamental difference is I don't believe the taxpayers should shell out any more money for health care benefits or pension benefits. I think that we've reached a saturation point with taxes and fees, and I think that's why we differ fundamentally there.
Well, I may be retired, doesn't mean I have a large income coming in, Mrs. McBride. You have no idea what I have coming in and what my, whatever retirement I have. You may be surprised. So don't categorize the fact that I'm retired, the money doesn't mean that much to me. It does. It means a lot to me, but that was a conscious decision when I decided to run for mayor. I knew the city could not afford to pay $82,000 to a mayor. I knew the city could not afford to pay health care benefits for my wife and I. I knew the city could not afford the buyout that people are taking. They're conscious decisions I made, and I'm giving back over a 4-year period well over $200,000 a year. Does it mean I have a lot of money? It doesn't mean that I have a large pension coming in. That's something that's personal, and doesn't mean just because I'm retired that I have a lot more money than you do.
Anyone else?
Mr. Barrett, I have one more announcement. I do have it on the list for voting purposes, but I did not include it when I was reading the resolutions as a new item. There's a new item, which is an ordinance on council's agenda. And that ordinance is an ordinance of the City of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, adopting the mayor's proposed general fund budget. Now therefore it is hereby ordered and enacted by the City Council of the City of Wilkes-Barre that the mayor's proposed general fund budget for 2021 is hereby adopted as follows. Section 1, the mayor's proposed budget for calendar year 2021 is hereby adopted without changes. A copy of the proposed budget is available for review at the office of the city clerk during normal business hours or on the city's website. Section 2, the provisions of this ordinance are severable. If any part of this ordinance is declared to be unconstitutional, illegal, or invalid, the validity of the remaining provisions shall be unaffected thereby. It is the intention of the Council of the City of Wilkes-Barre that this ordinance would have been adopted had such unconstitutional, illegal, or invalid part not been included. Section 3, all ordinances or parts of ordinances inconsistent herewith are hereby repealed. All ordinances not specifically amended hereby remain in full force and effect. Section 4, passed finally by the Council of the City of Wilkes-Barre on such and such a date, 2020. Section 5, this ordinance shall become effective on January 1st, 2021. Okay, so that's the only new item on council's agenda.
Okay. All right. There are no questions on any of the resolutions or the ordinance. We can move forward with comments by council. Mr. Belisco?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I've sat here last week and several weeks now, and I'm hearing from my council members about a statement saying myself and my fellow council members do not support layoffs. As I've asked the mayor last week in our budget meeting, could he explain what he meant by cutting services? And the mayor clearly said cutting services would possibly be yard waste and recycling and garbage. And asked why that would happen, because of layoffs. So the way I see it is a no vote on this ordinance is a yes vote for layoffs, due to the fact it will cut services. I personally cannot live with myself if I voted this down. If I voted no, I couldn't live with myself, taking the risk of city employees and the fact that cutting services in the city of Wilkes-Barre. I just can't live with myself with that. I urge you to think about that when you're voting today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Marconi?
I just, I sent in a couple emails to Mr. McCormick and Mr. Fratty today, and they took care of it. I just want to thank them for that. Nothing further until a little bit later on.
Thank you. Mrs. McBride?
I have nothing at this time.
Okay, Mr. Brooks?
I want to thank the mayor. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the mayor for seriously taking up the consideration of the COVID committee to help people. And I also want to thank you and Butch for paving Arch Street. That was one of the streets you and I went down to where we drove around each of our districts. Another one of those streets was Paris Street down by the railroad tracks. I wonder if there's any update on that. And I got a text from a resident on High Street wondering if there was any update or time frame for paving High Street. I think High Street was, Butch, if I'm not wrong, was a utility project?
Yes, Councilman Brooks, as far as let's address the Fair Street crossing, and it also includes the Franklin Street crossing down by Shields Market.
Okay,
Those crossings have to be addressed by the Luzerne County Rail Authority. They have assured us that they were going to take care of this at some point this year.
Okay.
Haven't seen any activity yet. We'll keep you posted on that.
okay,
And yes, High Street, Dana Street, all those streets in that area are affected by utility installation. It's ongoing, and we'll get to the restoration of the trench as soon as possible.
got it, okay. Thank you. No other further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You've heard me repeatedly talk about Pine Ridge Development, which is up in the Parsons Miners Mills area. And the mayor and I met with several residents up there earlier this year, took a very close look at it along with Mr. Fraudy was there as well, and saw that despite the potential, the development appeared to be not taken care of. It was overgrown. Residents complained about 6 feet of weeds next to their homes that they've invested their life savings in. The mayor took it upon himself, with the help of Mr. Fraudy, to actually go in and remove the overgrowth, cut it down, make it look presentable, and it looks 110% better. And the results of that now, I've just been informed by the realtor, is that since that happened, they've sold several lots, and there's interest in others as well. The cost of building materials is kind of holding some people back a little bit. We all know that in the pandemic, building materials are scarce and expensive, but it just goes to show that taking an interest in something and moving forward with it, something that has that type of potential. And if you get a chance, drive through there now. I know, Mr. Marconi, you're up in that area quite a bit there. You've seen how that was all cut down. And when you hear that type of good news, that there's actually development, and there haven't been too many new houses built in Wilkes-Barre that I'm aware of lately. I don't know when these will start, probably not till the spring, but thank you, Mr. Mayor, for taking the interest in there, and thanking you from the residents there that do live there. They're very excited about that as well. And Mr. Fraudy as well for your help with that. Laurel Run Creek Wall, which I know you're aware of it, in the area of the Scott Street Bridge. The Laurel Run Creek Wall is deteriorating right in that area, across from Motor World, right near the bridge area. I know we talked about that. If you could just maybe take a closer look at that and see if we can do something remedial to there. I don't know if it's too late in the year to do that, until we can make some permanent repairs to that wall.
We're going to try to make some repairs as soon as we have people available, Councilman. As you know, we applied for an H2O grant through the Department of Environmental Protection last year. We were unsuccessful. We're applying again when the grant becomes available.
Okay.
This is the chance you take. Sometimes you get one, sometimes you don't. But the infrastructure in the city of Wilkes-Barre is aging, and we focus on as much as we can. There's not enough money in the general fund budget to even make cursory repairs, let alone major repairs. We have to rely on grant money, and that's what we are planning on.
Okay, thank you. I look over at Tony, and he would tell me that wall's probably built in the 30s, I would assume, back in the,
WPA.
you weren't around then, not in time. But I'm sure that's when it was built, and so it's certainly showing its signs of aging there, so anything we can do there, the residents would appreciate. And speaking of aging and falling apart, Laird Street and Scott Street, again in that area, it's kind of rough. I don't know if we're still doing patching, but anything you can do on Laird Street to try and smooth that out a little bit would be much appreciated by the people that use Laird Street. I took a look at it today, and there's some pretty good depressions in it. So,
Councilman, we're fortunate that the weather's been decent, and plants are still available to provide asphalt. Again, as the mayor indicated, we have a bit of a crisis at Public Works, COVID related. As soon as we have people available, we'll certainly get out there and patch that. There's some other complaints that have come in, and we'll address them.
okay,
One thing
thank you.
I want to say, though, on behalf of the mayor, we've applied for money that comes from kind of a K-Rock paving program. Some of you may be familiar with this. We have done streets, and even before we were successful on 3 other applications. We're going to apply again. That's one of the streets that is a primary street. It's called K-Routes or Federal Aid Highways. That's one of them. Again, never a guarantee, but we are going to apply for that. along with some other streets. But that's, again, that money does not come free. There's a match required with that. Generally, we can pay for that through our liquid fuels fund. And it takes a while to develop this. When you deal with PennDOT, it's like geological years. It takes a while. But we are going to do that with our trees, one of the streets.
That's great. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, if we have nothing else from council, we'll take a brief intermission before we get into the regular session of council. Please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almighty and everlasting God, who presides over all things in heaven and earth, come and preside over these deliberations, so that those that make the decisions may be guided by your wisdom.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Mr. Ryan.
Mr. Belusko,
Here.
Mr. Marconi,
Here.
Mrs. Gilbert McBride,
Present.
Mr. Brooks,
Here.
Mr. Barrett.
Here.
Also in attendance tonight is Mayor Joy C. Brown, Administrator Charles McCormick, Assistant City Attorney Maureen Collins, Director of Operations Butch Frati, IT Director Frank Hirschberger, Assistant City Clerk Catherine Payne, and Administrative Assistant Lisa Sanfilippo.
Okay. And this would be the part of the meeting where we would solicit public input in regards to the resolutions and ordinance before us. I know that there are several letters that will be read into the record. Mr. Ryan will do that shortly. And anybody who wishes to call in can do so at this time. This is on agenda items only. Thank you.
Please state your name and where you're calling from.
Hi, this is Mark from Wilkes-Barre.
Go ahead, sir.
Good to go?
Yes, sir.
Hi, so I'm pretty obviously calling about the budget. I think you should vote against it because of the fee increases. Something that I wanted to bring up, specifically because in my work I work with people who are on unemployment and extended benefits and all that. I think we need to keep in mind that at the end of the year, the number of nationwide is around 12 million Americans are going to lose unemployment benefits. And we're already starting to see an increase in traffic at food assistance places and all that kind of stuff, where you saw those massive lines around the block in major cities back in April, back in March. That kind of desperate need, that's right around the corner. And that's only going to be prevented if there's some national bill gets signed, and that's not going to happen. We're going to be in a lame duck until mid-January when the new president gets sworn in, and nothing's going to happen until then. So at the same time that we're looking at millions of people losing their unemployment, and if there's 12 million Americans, I'm sure at least some of them are in our city, and in my line of work, I can tell you there's a lot of people on unemployment in our area, and they're about to lose that crucial money that's keeping them afloat. It has been keeping them afloat. And at the same time, you're asking them to pay more to the city. Again, like, you don't ask the same thing of colleges. You don't ask the same thing of businesses, just residents. So I think you need to keep in mind the extremely precarious situation a lot of our residents come in. People may say, well, if they're losing unemployment, they can go get a job. You need to keep in mind, like, our schools don't look like they're going to be full-time in person for a while. So if you have young kids, you can't go to work. If you have an immune deficiency or something where you're at particular risk of COVID, you can't go to work. So with these unemployment benefits going away and probably nothing getting signed on the national level until February at the earliest, you're looking at 2 months of no revenue. And so while people in our city are looking at 2 months of no revenue, we're asking them to pay more money. And I mean, we're hardly the only city or municipality that's having these kind of problems. Everyone around the country is struggling. It's because the government screwed up and they never signed a bill to give money to states and municipalities. But since that happened, municipalities all around the country are making cuts, and it's awful. You don't want anyone to lose their jobs. You don't want anyone to lose any less services, but you're going to have to at least furlough people. The idea that you could go through one of the worst economic recessions and the city budget would see no change except for fee increases in an economically distressed city is pretty wild. You need to learn to, every once in a while, tighten your belt. And as I said before, it's not just a temporary thing. Like, long term, this is a serious problem, and Wilkes-Barre's budget problems aren't going to go away by random fee increases here and there. So I'd urge you all to vote against the budget. Our people in Wilkes-Barre are already in pretty desperate straits. They don't need anything else to put further pressure on them. Thank you.
Wilkes-Barre Township, this is John Bryan and my wife,
Mary Ann Bryan.
and we wanted to talk about our support for the mayor's budget. We do a lot in your town, spend a lot of money, and we like to have our voice. And what I want to talk about and ask, did council tell their constituents about delays in trash pickup, recycling, snow removal, road maintenance that's going to be delayed? Did they give me those answers later, I hope. Did you tell them about layoffs because you vote no? Did you tell them people are going to lose their income? Did you tell them people are going to lose their health in a pandemic where people are sick and dying? And you're just going to say, I have mine, but I'm voting no? Please don't do that. Have a heart. Also, what are you going to give up? Why don't you tell us tonight what you're willing to give up in your salary and your benefits, like the mayor did. I think he said $53,000. And remember, someone said, I need the benefits. That's the only way. Well, what about the people that get laid off now? Tell me what their options are before you say no in a pandemic. Just remember, these consequences, they're yours for this vote. Don't come back and say, oh, it's not my fault. No, it is your fault. It is your fault. So I'd like to know just what you're told your constituents. Did you tell them it's $1 per week per household, not person? Did you tell them that dollar includes 1 bag or 10 bags of garbage and trash? But let me be clear too. The mayor's correct. There's going to be layoffs, and that's going to be on you, not the mayor. He gave you a good budget. $1 per person per week. I'd like to know if you could tell us tonight, before your vote, what you've done so far to help the mayor with this budget. I know last week you said something to the mayor about, well, maybe you could look at delinquents, or maybe you could look here, or maybe you could find money here. And the mayor said, we're doing that. And we've been doing it. Well, what got me then was, are you doing your job? How can you be on council? I'm sorry, how can you be on council and not knowing what the mayor's doing? It's called being proactive, isn't it? So please, think about your vote. Think about helping people. I know last week someone said, well, maybe instead of hiring out for certain things, maybe you could get the workers here to do more. how are they going to do more when you're laying off 25, 30 people? It doesn't happen. It doesn't make sense to hear that. The other thing I'll say is I took a walk, and I walked Scott Street, North Main, Butler, Madison, Washington, Horton, Roosevelt, Cary Ave, Carlisle, and in Southampton on the way back. And it was a nice day, so it took me a weekend. I may have ran into 50 people, but I'm honest, I didn't count them. But when I stopped and I would talk to them, I'd introduce myself. I would say, so what do you think, what's the mayor doing? Oh, he's doing great. Hey, roads are getting done, he's doing a good job. I said, but you don't like his 1% increase? What 1% increase? I said, the ones that councils were telling us that you people are calling and you're mad about the dollar. I said, when they told you about that, did they tell you about layoffs? Did they tell you about people losing their income? Did they tell you about not having health care during a killing pandemic? Did they tell you all that? And a lot of them said, no. I said, but you don't want to pay $1? And they said, well, we didn't know all that stuff. I said, well, I'm thinking, well, that's funny, because I met about 50 people throughout your community. Obviously, I ran into the ones you didn't talk to.
Sir, we're going to have to stop at this.
So think about that.
We've gone over the 5-minute time.
And another thing is,
Sir.
you're talking about saving $1. Why don't you tell the people, hey, I'm saving you $1. But you know what I'm not going to tell you? I'm not going to tell you all that
I didn't mean to cut you off, but apparently you couldn't hear me and was just going to continue on. So in fairness to everyone who is waiting for the next call, thank you.
Bob Kalabowski, I'm calling from Wilkes-Barre, and I live in my truck down by the river. Now, I'd like to tell the mayor and the other city officials when they're talking there, if they could talk into the microphone, because I can't really hear them when they're not speaking into the microphone, if they could do that. But I think the mayor and one of the previous callers took away what I actually was going to say. But I'm going to repeat it again, and I'm going to ask, before we ask any of the unions to give any further concessions, I want to know if the council people are going to give up this health care. And I think when it came out, and I'm not singling anyone out, Beth or anyone else, but when it came out that Mr. Belusco is getting all that money, $11,082 a year for health care, and then Beth tops it off with her total salary of $41,528. I'm reading from a paper that was given to me by a citizen. I want to know how we possibly, with the dire straits that this city is in, continue to take this amount of health care. And Beth, it's really nice that you say you're going to do it the next term. Well, everybody will forget about it the next term. And I think it's within the mayor's power to strip you of that money and to lower your salaries. And I'm going to tell you why. And you could ask Mr. Barrett, and I'd like him to meet with the city attorneys tomorrow to tell him how they were able to give Tom Layton a $4,000 raise that was never put on the ballot, never given the citizens a chance to vote it up or down. So I'm asking, are you going to give up your health care? You have to realize that's hundreds of thousands of dollars in the next 3 years, the next upcoming 3 years. Are you going to give up your health care? And also, are you willing to take a 50% pay cut? The mayor did a pay cut. He saw how much money they're saving. And yet we're asking for, the public works people who probably work the hardest out of everybody, some of their salaries down there, you people are making more part-time than they do in their salaries. How could you possibly justify keeping this, knowing, especially the story that Tony told about that poor woman? Are you going to give up your health care, and can you take a 50% pay cut? And let me ask you something, all of you. If the mayor does decide to pull that out of the budget, and I don't see why he can't, and I think if he talks to Mr. Barrett, what they did with Tom Layton changing things around, what will you do if he just takes it out of the budget and doesn't fund it? That we can't afford it? Will you sue the city? Will you sue him? Will you sue me? We cannot afford to keep paying this health care. And also, just so you understand, it's $116,000 a year. And plus, you got to realize we're paying, when you pay all that other stuff with those other retired council people who use their part-time service towards a full-time pension, that's $180,000 a year, which I pointed out. The one former mayor who's no longer, he's deceased, has already collected almost $700,000 in health and retirement benefits and only worked 8 years full-time for the city. So I'm going to ask you, are you going to give up voluntarily your health care and take a 50% pay cut? And what will you do if the mayor pulls it out of the budget? Will you sue him? What will you do? So I'm gonna hang up in a minute or so. I want to hear your answer. We can't afford it. And it's not, I'm not picking on any individual. I'm picking on the issue. We can't afford to pay this anymore. And there's no union person going to give up a dime until you people give up. And if we have to, I understand the mayor's position there. If we have to have an increase in some of these things, it's not that he wants to. We're stuck. It's either that or we're going to have to lay these people off. So I'm going to hang up in a second, and I want an answer unless somebody wants to answer me right now. And Mr. Barrett, if there's any chance, tell us, because I don't think many other council people were there, how you gave Tom Layton a $4,000 a year raise, or whatever it was at the time, without putting it on the ballot. Can you answer me?
Are you finished, Bob?
Well, yeah, I want to know if Bill, if anybody could answer me.
Okay, Bob, if you don't have anything else, I'm going to ask you now, if anybody wants to comment, they certainly can.
What do you say?
If anyone cares to comment, they can.
Well, I don't expect them to because I'm hitting them with the truth, so they're not going to say nothing. But I could call back again, right? When you get into the other part?
Yes, sir. You can.
Hello?
You can call back during the public session.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it. But ask Bill if he can answer that. I'm going to turn the TV up now.
I just want to say something about Mr. Kavanagh's comments. Council is all over the place with healthcare benefits, from full family to individual to not taking any health care to not taking any waiver. I'm not disagreeing that at some point something needs to be done to make it uniform going into the next term of council. Personally, I mean, our council salaries have been frozen for the last 16 years, 16 plus years, probably more than that. I don't take any council-related benefits. I don't take the health care, the council health care. I don't take the waiver. I don't participate in the pension fund here. And I know everybody's kind of all over the place with all of that. So, yes, probably at some point it should all be standardized so that we don't have to continue these types of discussions that we're hearing so much about, especially at budget time. As far as Mayor Layton, I'm not familiar with what he's speaking about. Obviously, the mayor's salaries over the years have increased proportionately. That's nothing new. It's nothing unique to Mayor Layton or any other mayor. Commend Mayor Brown for the stance that he took on that. That's very commendable. But I believe at some point the mayor's salary was, at some point, many times, the mayor's salary was increased just like other salaries were over the years. So I'm not quite familiar with what he's speaking about. It kind of makes it sound like we decided to give the mayor a raise, and as you know, that isn't quite the way it works. We don't give raises, and we don't take salaries. That's not our job. Well, anyway, that's all I have to say. Unless anybody else wants to comment on that particular subject before we move on, that's fine.
I'll comment. I just want to touch on the healthcare benefits again, since Mr. Kablabowski brought them up. And I know that I sound like a broken record because I've said this time and time again, but when I signed on to the city's healthcare plan, my family literally didn't have a choice. My husband came home from his new job with the benefit packet, and when we looked at the cost per pay, it was $400 per pay. And I was 8 months pregnant at the time, and there is no way that we could have afforded that, knowing that we had a baby on the way and we were going to have to pay for diapers, formula, et cetera, all these other costs that come with having a baby. And I thought, okay, instead of taking the city's healthcare, because I knew I would get flack for it, especially when it's politically convenient to get flack for it, I thought, okay, I'll try the Affordable Care Act. I should qualify for healthcare that way. My family should qualify that way. Well, no, I don't, because my employer, the city, offers healthcare. So if we want to change that, then yeah, we should. I would have no problem at all doing that. And I said it before, when I came home and told my husband that nothing would come out of my paycheck for healthcare, he thought I heard them wrong. And I think that's something else that we need to explore. I know Scranton just had an independent firm come in to look at their healthcare costs and how they could reduce them. And I think that's something that Wilkes-Barre needs to do as well. I think that, as I said before, there are systemic problems within our city's budget that aren't sustainable in the long run, and that it is time for us to explore those options. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Barrett, may I? Oh, thank you. As far as the pension, I don't take the pension. I don't plan on taking the pension either. The medical, the health care, I did not take it this year, and I'm not planning on taking it next year either for 2021. I've been in contact with City Hall Human Resource this week to finalize that. And also, my eye and dental, I believe it's around $1,050, maybe $1,100. I'm certainly willing to pay for that in 2021 as well. That is all I have, sir.
Mr. Barrett, may I say?
Sure.
Mr. Marconi, I want to commend you for what you're doing. You're giving back the $3,600 buyout this year. You're not taking it next year. So I want to thank you for that.
You're welcome, sir.
I've been in contact with
Hi, my name's Jason Carr from Saylorsburg, Pennsylvania. I would just like to address a couple items that were discussed regarding the pension. And I understand that the pension board has already approved the funding to make up the deficit. Mr. Ryan just said it's been a long-standing dilemma in the city of Wilkes-Barre. I don't know why that is. It's very simple to fix, but there may not be that many qualified people in Wilkes-Barre government to correct it. If we look at the pension deficit, there's $134 million that the city has in unfunded pension obligations. The board approved $22 million to be infused into the pension account. That would bring it down to $112 million. That would bring up the funding ratio from 53% to 65%. On average, the city actually funds on a yearly basis 62% of an employee's pension, 50% of their average salary, plus an additional 12%. The dilemma, Mr. Ryan, if you haven't figured it out yet, and that Mr. Mayor Brown is denying or refuses to acknowledge, is that the police and the firemen are walking away with between 80 and 90% of their salaries when they retire, when the city is only funding 62%. So that's why there's a $112 million deficit as we speak. And I will almost guarantee you that 1 year from now, when we look at the funding ratio, it will be below 65% as this trend continues, and that no one wants to acknowledge. I've let Mr. Barrett 3 different times in the last 3 meetings without dissension say that the city of Wilkes-Barre is waiting for the legislature in Pennsylvania to overhaul the pension reform. But that may be the case to have something done voluntarily, but the mayor has to stand up and ask the unions to concede some of the items that are included in their salaries for the pension calculation. If that's agreed upon, then you don't have to wait. But Mr. Barrett wants to continuously run that political line to throw the citizens of Wilkes-Barre off. Mr. Barrett, I understand money better than anyone sitting in that room right now. So please stop lying to the public. Secondly, regarding the budget, I wish the issues were as simple as having city council concede some benefits and pay. Mr. Kavabowski brought up the benefit side, but as well, the public of Wilkes-Barre needs to understand, Wilkes-Barre City Council earns $13,500 a year, and that is the third highest compensated salary in the state, only behind Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. Yes, you have frozen your salaries for 10 years. You need to bring them down. That's obvious as well. But you're far from the problems, the financial problems to be solved in the city of Wilkes-Barre. Looking at it, viewing the last couple of meetings, I've seen Mayor Brown single out Councilwoman Beth Gilbert several times now. First was over the police commission and now over the budget. I see that when Mayor Brown gets nervous or someone disagrees with him, he attacks. It's unfortunate, and he should be a bigger person and put together a budget that works for all of the people. I know there's resistance by, I think, more than half the council to Mayor Brown's budget proposals tonight. Be a bigger person and be a leader instead of attacking a woman who is being attacked by both residents and employees of the city of Wilkes-Barre, who has never voted in 5 years to raise a fee or taxes. That's someone who I look up
Chairman,
to,
time.
Who I applaud. So again, Wilkes-Barre is a backward city, but
Mr. Clark?
it's hard for me to believe and witness
Mr. Clark?
someone attacking Beth Gilbert, who has never raised a fee or taxes on the citizens of Wilkes-Barre. The structural problems within the city of Wilkes-Barre will not be corrected tonight. With the
Again, I don't know if we're having trouble being heard on the other end. Definitely went over the time limit. I just want to comment on, I mean, certainly anything that I've ever said being accused of lying to the public is a little bit of a stretch. There is pension reform being looked at the state level. However, the mayor and I had this discussion as recently as yesterday about pension calculations and how they are part of collective bargaining agreements. And collective bargaining agreements are very strong documents and not easily changed. They can be changed through bargaining. But again, it's not something that the mayor can hit a gavel with and say, you know, we're doing away with that, it's done, as much as we'd like to. Do I agree? Yes, I agree that overtime and other things cannot be factored into pension calculations. However, that is something that has to be bargained. It is in probably all of the collective bargaining agreements. And as the state is, of course, looking at that as well. So if it becomes law, it's a little bit different, and that can supersede some of the issues that we're dealing with. Any other comments on most recent call? Okay.
State your name and where you're calling from.
5 minutes.
Kathy, it's Bob calling back again. Can you please ask him to speak into the microphone? I don't want to put my ear in my zenith and get my eardrum blown out when somebody talks. You got to tell him to talk into the microphone because I can't hear it.
Yeah, Bill Murtha. I'm calling from Wilkes-Barre.
Go ahead, Mr. Michael.
Hi, am I on now?
Yes.
Okay, I just have a few comments about the budget tonight. First of all, I'd like to express my opinion that Mayor Brown seems to be offering a pretty simple solution to a problem that's actually quite complex. The city this year has incurred quite a few extra costs due to COVID. They also have not had reimbursement from federal and state monies that would have helped cover that. I think the $100 fee increase is extremely reasonable, and it also offers a solution later that a millage increase wouldn't have. That being, a millage increase would just be there. The $100 fee would have to be added to the budget yet again next year. So it's kind of self-limiting. It'll only be here for this year, and I think it's an extremely reasonable option. I'd also like to remind council members that at every council meeting, they report certain projects and certain things they've done for constituents. They've cleaned this up, they've done that, they reported a street has holes and DPW patched it. But strangely, not everyone on council seems to acknowledge that these things cost money and manpower. Yet, it seems to be expected that even since the McLaughlin administration, that city employees can continue to do more with less. I think we've gone way beyond that point, and a $100 increase is certainly not unreasonable. In closing, I'd like to add that nobody wants to see increased costs. I don't, nobody wants to. But I think it's only reasonable to understand that the city has experienced a lot of problems and a lot of extra costs this year. A one-time $100 increase in fees, I think, is extremely reasonable. And for people who can't afford it, I do empathize with them. But I would also like to remind those people and council as well that this isn't necessarily a thing that's going to be there every year. And even technically, for anyone who can't afford it, it doesn't change the actual reason that the city needs the money. The city is in the same straits as a lot of these people are, and I think everybody needs to understand that. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
State your name and where you're calling from.
Sam Choi, Kathy, Wilkes-Barre. I do have an email.
Go ahead, Mr. Troy.
I do. This is the agenda portion of the meeting, or is this just general public comment?
This is on the
Hello?
budget, or this is on the agenda items.
Well, I do have an email that I sent in on the agenda items, my comments, but can I elaborate, or can I add to that? There's only a couple of paragraphs that I sent in. I was told by Mr. Ryan that I can't do both, but I did miss one or two things, and one or two things I want to emphasize, if that's okay. I think I would like Mr. Belasco, who has, am I being heard there?
Yes, Mr. Troy. Go ahead.
Mr. Belasco has indicated, at least this is what I inferred from his comments and that gentleman from Wilkes-Barre Township, that somehow that there's an either-or situation here. I think the mayor and Mr. Belasco, Mr. Barrett, whom I think support this budget with the increase in the fees, have some explaining to do as to why this is an either-or situation. In other words, if we don't pass this budget with the doubling of the fees, there are layoffs or cuts in services. That is, to me, is a misrepresentation of the situation. This city, I'm not blaming one individual. I'm not blaming the mayor, and I'm not blaming anybody specifically on council. I don't think anybody has really done their homework. Many things have been mentioned by the previous callers. I like that gentleman, by the way, from Wilkes-Barre Township, maybe to explain further why he is indulging in our affairs and trying to
tell us that it's a good thing to pass this budget. Maybe he could come down here and pay my sewer fee and my garbage fee and all, my recycling fee, that is, the doubling of it if this budget passes. And he could also pay my rain tax and other fees and taxes that I have. I am struggling just like everybody else in this, a lot of other people, I don't say everybody, but senior citizens who are on fixed incomes and who have lost a source of income from the pandemic. I don't think there's a sense of empathy on the part of the mayor or the two councilmen, at least two council people that intend to vote for this budget, especially from what I heard from Mr. Velasco. He has this thing twisted around. I think that if he's using his conscience, Mr. Velasco, you should vote against this budget. Why should we taxpayers who have not caused this fiscal crisis suffer and bear the burden of this increase? We didn't cause this increase. I've been following city affairs since 2007 when Mayor Layton was in office. And I can tell you that there was very little consideration from that point on, in 2007 to the present. There was a lot of reckless spending, and there was continuous tax increases and fee increases. Mayor George, to some extent, tried to blunt those things. I mean, he was modestly successful. I know Mayor Brown has a good heart about this, but I think this has to be reassessed. And why other things can be done here to raise the money to $4 million, whatever the gap is. I'm talking about the budget now, of course. Other things can be done, such as concessions from union members and non-union employees along the lines of healthcare. I don't think we need a layoff. If we can get some concessions from them, if other sources of revenue, such as I suggested in the last meeting, can be looked at more closely. I'm going to close with this comment because I guess my email comments will be read. But I think the mayor and council should look into to creating a task force or an ad hoc committee, include a lot of public citizens who could take a closer look at the city's finances and find where expenditures can be cut and where new sources of revenue can be created to avoid this increase in sewer and recycling fees. And just a quick comment on the $21 million to cover the pension fund. That's in my email. I think council should move very cautiously on that. I was told that there is no risk involved in floating this bond issue. I would like to know why that's the case. Thank you.
Just a quick comment on that, Mary, maybe you might want to correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not passing a bond issue with this pension fund resolution. This is simply allowing our 205 funding to go to a collaborative organization for better investment purposes. We're not floating a bond, we're not taking a loan, we're not borrowing $1, we're not doing anything like that. And there seems to be a little bit of misconception. I noticed something in the media as well. It appears as though we were taking a loan or doing something to that effect. There is no downside to this that I can see. There's nothing that's going to cause us any concerns or cause us any additional liability. And we're not, again, taking on an additional loan. We're not increasing debt or doing anything like that. So I'm not quite sure where all that's coming from.
Bill, there's no liability on behalf of the city. The Act 205 state reimbursement that's going to go to pay for the cost of it.
Correct.
So even if for some reason the state stops giving us that Act 205, there's no liability on behalf of the city. We still get the $22 million infusion. We still save $1.3 million next year on our MMO, and the year after that, $1.1 million. So there is no liability on behalf of the city.
Thank you, Mayor.
Please state your name and where you're calling from.
Yeah, this is John Bryan again, Wilkes-Barre Township. My name mentioned. I just like that gentleman to know. We do a lot for the city. We put a lot of time into the city. We're a blight committee.
Yeah.
We clean up the pollution. We clean up traffic rates.
Sir, can I stop? Sir.
To come and help them.
Sir, can I stop you for 1 second? You called a few minutes ago, correct? Did you call a few minutes ago? Okay.
Could I?
You already called, is that correct?
I called before,
Okay.
someone mentioned my name.
Okay, you can
In
call
the
back, you
township.
can call later on in the meeting if
And
you
I
wish
would-
during the public comment session.
Well,
Go ahead, Kathy.
well, I would love to respond.
Sir, we're not going to go back and forth, you already
You
called.
didn't- Well, the point is, no one stopped when my name.
Okay.
All I wanted,
The next call. The moment I tell you to start reading the letters, the moment I do, we'll get a call. But Mr. Ryan, I know that you have probably 5 or 6 letters
Yes.
to be read in.
Would you like me to start, Mr. Chairman?
I think we should start. And that will make somebody call.
Okay. There are seven letters on agenda items. 7 letters on agenda items. First one is, it's actually addressed to Mayor Brown and Administrator McCormick, but it was referred by administration to council. I'm not sure if you are aware of the fire on the corner of South Franklin and Ross Streets at 3 o'clock Wednesday, 11/18. There wasn't much coverage in the media. At the early morning fire yesterday, your Wilkes-Barre firefighters forced entry into the apartment and found heavy smoke in the unconscious victim. We carried him from the 2nd floor to the outside and began treating him. The patient was rescued and receiving advanced medical care in our ambulance within 5 minutes of WBFD arriving on scene. The fire was contained to the apartment of origin and extinguished. Firefighters provided warm blankets for residents in the cold, while crews vented smoke from the building, protected other apartments from water damage, and cleaned up after the fire. I know that you understand the need for essential services. We have responded to over 75 calls for service since Tuesday, including COVID patients, CO alarms, car accidents, and this fire. This should be a staunch reminder to others as to why services cannot be cut. Respectfully, Jeremy. Second is, dear honorable members of council, over the past few weeks, each of you have received commentary on Mayor Brown's proposed budget. Many of these comments have either supported or suggested voting against the budget. I also understand that at this point, many of you have your decision made as to whether you support this budget or do not. For those of you that are against this budget, I am writing to ask that you take one final moment and consider the future impact of your decision. This is far from pointing fingers of who is to blame for the financial status of the city. By continuing with your decision to not support this budget, you are placing the city in jeopardy far more than just financially. Proposed layoffs are on the table. While we heard the number and from what department is not finalized, the potential to lose 30 city employees is certainly a possibility. Regardless of the department, this can affect the health, safety, and well-being of every resident and visitor of this great city. While I understand that no one on council wants to cut essential services, please understand that it is unfortunately part of the risk when it comes to layoffs. It simply may not be avoidable. The effect of laying off just one member of an essential service dramatically increases that health and safety risk for every single person in the city. Aside from leaving vacancies in leadership roles, laying off one member of any department will lead to increased overtime. Someone will have to pick up the duties of that person's job. With increased overtime comes increased fatigue. We are in uncharted territory with the COVID-19 pandemic. The last thing anyone needs at this time is increased overtime, increased fatigue, or doubling workload when it is already at an all-time high. Every resident and every visitor deserves second-to-none service. By increasing overtime, fatigue, and workload, that second-to-none service is in peril. While employees try their hardest to not let that play a role in their decision-making and work ethic, there is only so much that can be asked of each employee, especially at such a critical time when they are already giving us as much as they can. As you know, these increased risks are in addition to the daily tasks and routines that never ceased when COVID started. So please take a second to fully understand that while you may feel you are protecting your constituents financially, you will be putting them at a much greater risk affecting their safety, health, and security. Thank you for your time, and please understand the decision is yours. Thank you, Travis Tamarantz. This is from Samuel Troy that Mr. Troy was referring to recently. Concerning consideration of the bond issue, which, as Chairman Barrett pointed out, is not a bond issue, I would like it explained to me, as I think all of the other taxpayers in the community would also be interested in knowing how there is little or no risk in the city floating this bond issue. I'm sure there are risks involved, and I would like some council member or the mayor to elaborate on this to convince me and other taxpayers that this is the best route to go, shoring up the pension fund in this traditional way. Isn't the city going to suffer in terms of its credit rating? Even if this proposal is passed, I think council should act to establish an ad hoc committee or task force to study other ways, non-traditional ways of reinforcing the pension fund. For example, what about changing the current formula for figuring the pensions, which, as I understand it, includes overtime, vacation days, and sick time as a basis for the city's pension contribution to each employee. The time for true pension reform for the city of Wilkes-Barre is now. It is foolish to think that kicking the can down the road is going to settle the ultimate solvency problem of the pension fund. As far as the budget goes, I urge council to reject Mr. Brown's budget. Sacrifices asked of the taxpayers may seem insignificant to certain council members and him, but it is actually overwhelming to a great majority of Wilkes-Barre residents who are struggling to survive, who are living on fixed incomes. How about the additional hardships that have come about because of the pandemic? It is also unfair of the mayor to characterize this budget as an either-or situation. In other words, to say that layoffs would result if the budget isn't passed is being disingenuous on the mayor's part. There are many alternatives both on the revenue and expense side of the budget, such as I advocated last week. For example, why can't the mayor seek some concessions in terms of health care from union and non-union employees? The bottom line is that council should reject this budget and send it back to the mayor and have him think about or have him come up with alternatives to this drastic increase in fees. The budget as it stands now to me is a moral abomination. Thank you, Sam Troy. Next is dear Wilkes-Barre council members. LCTA is great for council's reconsideration of our local share account application request. If awarded the opportunity, LSA funding will provide local cash match to 96.775% committed PennDOT and Federal Transit Administration funding. $700,000 in LSA will ultimately leverage our $48 million in committed funding for construction costs. The LSA is providing a much-needed local match for this project. It is a great benefit and of key importance for the city that we are seeking to alleviate the burden of a significant local cash match with this grant request. This project will guarantee the advancement of an important redevelopment project for Wilkes-Barre. LCTA and the city's new transit facility will redevelop the blighted former Murray complex when the building is completed. The LCTA organization will be moving over 150 jobs into the downtown area while providing transportation services which are vital for so many city residents. The new transit facility project is a good fit for LSA funding. It is a request to fund infrastructure with measurable and clear outcomes. We hope that the facts of LCTA's application proves the merit of our need. We have funding ready, the site is ready, the application is phased, so we can start whenever the LSA is awarded. This is an important first step as we appreciate the work of council to approve and provide us an equal opportunity to gather the match funding we require for the project. Best regards, Lee Horton, Interim Executive Director, LCTA. Next, it says, it just makes no sense whatsoever that Mayor Brown puts over $900,000 in a budget for overtime pay. The first thing any company or city does that's looking to save money is cutting overtime hours. Several large companies in our area eliminated overtime hours to employees for this simple reason. It's a financial killer that hurts businesses in stressful times, and Wilkes-Barre City should treat overtime pay the same way. My question to Mayor Brown is, why would you rather lay off employees in these hard times instead of controlling the overtime hours? It makes no sense at all that you will pick overtime pay over instead of keeping a worker employed that supports a family. Question to Mr. Barrett and Mr. Belusco. Around 2 years ago, when Mayor Tony George wanted to increase the recycling fee $10 a year, you voted no. Please explain how now you can vote yes to a $100 increase a year. Thanks, Kevin Rhodes, Wilkes-Barre.
Mr. Ryan, if I may really quickly answer that.
Sure.
Yes, we did turn down a request to increase the recycling fee by $10. The problem then was, at that particular time, there were hundreds and hundreds of residents that were not paying, just weren't paying the recycling fee. And council wanted, it's Mr. Belusco and I that are mentioned here, we wanted the mayor to go after that first before we looked at raising everyone else's fee that were paying it. This administration here, as you know, is aggressively going after persons that are not paying those fees, including putting liens on properties, and rightfully so. We're asking others to pay, whether it's $50 regardless of what happens, or whether it's $100, we need to continue doing that. And, also, in the not too distant past, there was a time when we made money on recycling. We were actually paid for our recycling, what we collected in recycling. And now it's just the opposite. We pay quite a bit of money to dispose of recycling, probably almost as much as we do to get rid of trash. There's no market for it, therefore we are losing, I hate to say we're losing money on this service, but we are. We're not generating any revenue, not generating any revenue, we're actually expending quite a bit of money just disposing of this recycling. And I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Thank you. The final one on agenda items is from Greg Griffin, Wilkes-Barre Area Citizens Blight Committee. Mayor, council members, and citizens. Our Blight Committee members have been volunteering for the past 14 months, donating their time, money, and vehicles to clean up Wilkes-Barre neighborhoods. We are extremely concerned that this budget impasse may result in layoffs of DPW employees and other city workers. We believe blight will increase if layoffs occur and city services are cut. If the majority of city council disagree with Mayor Brown's budget, then that council member must have a workable alternative to the mayor's budget. Do you have one? Voting down the mayor's budget without having another realistic plan is irresponsible. Voting down the mayor's budget will, in our opinion, paralyze Wilkes-Barre, doom Wilkes-Barre to investors pulling out, and lead to a distressed city status. As our blight team members pick up dumped trash across the city, we see firsthand that these dumpsters do not care for the city. Citizens have to realize that the trash and sewage they create cost money to dispose of, and costs keep going up. If some residents do not want to pay their fair share of the fee increases, that too is irresponsible. Thank you. Liza, I don't have it with my information.
Do you want me to read it?
Okay. Wish me to read it, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
I'm writing in concern of the increase in recycling and sewer fees. Mayor George Brown, you say it's only $1 a week. Do you realize that all adds up? There are so many people on a fixed income in this area. This increase will greatly hurt them. Please look at all options the council has to give. There has got to be some other option where so many people will get hurt. You will see rents go up, and I, like myself, could not afford an increase in rent, and neither can a great deal of the Wilkes-Barre area. Mr. Mayor, please open your mind and listen to other suggestions. Thank you. Liza DeWitt.
Is that the last letter, sir?
That's the last one.
That was the last one. Any comment from council before we move forward on any of those?
Oh, I'm sorry, there is, that's a general business letter.
General letter? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, move forward, Mr. Ryan.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I have an unusual request. Before we get into the voting, I'd like to make a few comments myself, if I may.
Go ahead.
With permission of council. I'll
Go ahead,
try
Mr.
and
Ryan.
make it as quick as possible, but I'm neutral and I'm just imparting information regarding on the subject of increased fees that should be considered. And I'm bringing these items up, these comments up, because I haven't heard any other people bring it up, any other individual on council, the mayor, or other members of the public. Maybe they have, but I haven't heard it myself. So if you'll please beg my indulgence, I'll continue.
Go ahead.
First of all, I'd like to point out that last night on the news, Hazelton's mayor stated that he is looking to enact a tax increase in the amount of an average of $217 per home. That's an increase of $117 over the fee increases proposed by Mayor Brown. All municipalities are facing the same problems. As the one caller said earlier, just as individuals have to face the same problems due to COVID-19, along with many other factors. Secondly, I'm neutral. I'm just imparting information, as I said. One of the primary roles of the city clerk is to provide as much information to city council as possible in order to make not only informed decisions, but also the best decisions possible due to circumstances. We in this office always strive for that, and I believe we succeed. What I'm about to say is in keeping with that role and that spirit. I'd like to bring your attention to a time in the city's recent history, approximately 16 to 17 years ago, when there were no, or at the very least, very few traffic lights in Center City, Wilkes-Barre. There were many vacant buildings and storefronts or vacant plots of land where unique classic buildings stood but were torn down with nothing put in their place. The South Main Street redevelopment project, which houses Movies 14 among others, was non-existent. There was not very much to choose from by way of food establishments or entertainment venues in Center City, as well as not very much to point to as a source of pride in Wilkes-Barre. Beth, you may be too young to remember this reality of our city, but I'm sure the rest of council and city council will. I would think Tony certainly could confirm it, and or Larry Newman of the Diamond City Partnership could also confirm it. In particular, it was a January night during this period when I attended a small celebration at one of the very few restaurants on South Main Street. I had to park down past the intersection of South Main and East Northampton Streets. When I left the celebration, heading to my car, the entire area looked, from what little light there was, remember the streetlight situation. It looked like a war-torn, destitute section of a city in some other part of the country, or even in some other destitute country. There were any number of unsavory, rough-looking individuals, to be kind, hanging around. I have no doubt multiple drug deals were being made. I actually witnessed one right before I got to my car. In the dark, it took place in the dark at the central location. And I witnessed several more before the area was redeveloped. It was, to say the least, a pretty bleak, dangerous-looking commercial neighborhood. Shortly after that night, within a week or so, as I recall, some fine, upstanding citizen threw a Molotov cocktail past the barricades on the sidewalk into the entryway of what is now the East Indian restaurant that's there now. This condition, I firmly believe, was an obvious result of the city having no money in its coffers to prevent the urban decay that I just described. The city had no money because, as I recall, the city fathers, who were well-meaning, I have no doubt about that, they were well-meaning and concerned about the residents, and as a result had not raised taxes and or fees in a very long time. And if they did, it was not enough to keep pace with ever-increasing costs. Nobody ever wants tax or fee increases, just like no one wants the cost of food, housing, or vehicles, et cetera, to go up. The fact is, as we all know, the cost of everything always goes up, not down. As in any private business, if a city does not do what it has to do to pay the bills, and it does not have a thriving commercial and or industrial and or business base, where else can it get the funding from but the taxpayers? I said that at a council meeting when there was some kind of a similar impasse a couple of years ago. And I also said our funding shortfalls are not the fault or cause of any one person, as a gentleman caller said tonight. A series of multiple factors are the cause. Most recently, this year, it's COVID-19, to the tune of $4.5 million in lost revenue. Some people have tried to make increases and improvements in our tax structure, statewide, citywide, etc. Most recently, State Representative Paszynski's recent proposed state taxing legislation was publicized in the paper maybe 3/4 of a year ago or so. It was fair, but it's not going to go anywhere in our state legislature, and it didn't. If a city can't get funding from any sources, it will regress and go backward instead of forward and improve. Then it ends up with the situation I just described, which was Wilkes-Barre 16 years ago. Municipal government cannot bail out. I empathize completely with people who can't afford increases, even $1 a day. But municipal government cannot bail out anyone financially and doesn't have the reserves to do it. And Wilkes-Barre isn't the only municipality in this situation. It wasn't ever designed for that purpose. If you want to help these residents who can't make ends meet, work to make the city attractive to industry and companies, employees with people and jobs. Increase the tax base, work with this mayor as a partner, not adversaries. By the way, the mayor did not put me up to this. We have not discussed any of this at all, nor have I with Charlie or any members of his administration. And again, I'm being neutral. I'm not criticizing council or the mayor, just pointing things out. And he doesn't know I'm going to say this, but what I've observed personally from this mayor is that he's been working since he started, since day one, very long, hard hours trying to do what it takes to turn the city around. You, council, and his administration together need to work together to get it done. If you don't work together to reach an agreement on this budget, things will get better, things will get worse, certainly not better.
Thank you, sir.
And finally, I just have one more comment, if I can find it. Fortunately, I can't find it. But what I'd like to do, and you could peruse it at your leisure, is I came across an article in City and County, American City and County magazine in October of 2016. It was a great article about how who that magazine chose as a municipal leader of the year got things going in his small city. He worked out of the box, and he worked tirelessly. He worked with council, not against council, and council worked with him to turn their city around. It was to the point where the city was bankrupt and was in real danger of losing their charter, and they were going to be absorbed by a neighboring, much larger city. This mayor grew up and lived in the city. He didn't want it to happen, and he got to work. It's a great article as far as what we need to do here. A couple of years ago, I did give it to previous administration, a member of previous administration, and said at that time also, 2 years ago, this is what we need here. We need to bring in industry. We need to stop putting tax increases and fee increases solely on the backs of our residents. But we have to have alternatives to that in order to stop doing that. So this is just one example of what can be done and how people can look out of the box and think out of the box in order to turn things around in municipalities.
If you can leave us all with a copy of that article, that'd be great.
Yep.
I'd like to move forward with the voting session now, if possible.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple comments. Jim Ryan, you're absolutely right when it comes to increasing industry and working together with the administration. We need to increase our tax base, increase the jobs, and increase our population. And as I said many times, that I will work with you to do that. In the previous administration, Patagonia came to town and wanted to have a tour, and I gave them a tour for their mid-level executives that would naturally want to live in one of the apartment buildings downtown or one of the buildings downtown. Now, Patagonia did come to the valley. They came obviously to Hanover Township, but I am certainly willing to do that and work with you at any time to sell the city. I think between the two of us, Cracker Jack salesmen, I'll give the historical aspect, you'll give the financial aspect, and we can get more business and industries into Wilkes-Barre. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ryan, for your comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, we'll go into the voting now.
Please.
Okay, and they are listed and will be taken a vote on individually. I'll just go down the listing on the agenda and take them in sequence. First resolution is the Pension Funding Solution, LLC.
So
Motion,
moved.
second, and vote.
So moved.
Tony.
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
And second,
I'll second.
Mr. Barrett? Mr. Beluska?
Yes.
Mr. Marconi?
Yes.
Mrs. McBride?
Yes.
Mr. Brooks?
Before I vote, I just wanted to say that the reason this was tabled was to explore it more, to learn it more. And in that vein, I read through Chapter 4 of Act 205. It was very exciting to me. I spoke to members of the pension board, and I really like to thank Mark Lear for his insightfulness in explaining it, and I promised him that we all know Chair sits on these pension board, and I promised him that I would start in advance of next year to coming to pension meetings so I can understand it more. So, but I really want to thank Mark Lear for his insightfulness, and I vote yes.
Okay, and your vote, Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Thank you. Beth, I asked you. I got your vote
Yes.
too, right? Okay, thank you. Second is the LSA grant for Shine LC project.
Motion?
Second.
Okay, that's Mr. Belusco, and the second was Mr. Brooks. Mr. Belusco.
Yes.
Mr. Marconi.
Yes.
Mrs. McBride.
Yes.
Mr. Brooks.
Yes.
And Mr. Barrett.
Yes.
Motion passes. Third is authorizing the proper city officials to prepare and submit necessary application to the Commonwealth Financing Authority relative to LCTA's new transit facility project. Motion, second, and vote.
So moved.
Mr. Marconi? Mr. Brooks?
Second.
Mr. Brooks? Mr. Barrett? I can't tell with these masks on who's saying what, especially when you're facing away from me.
It's Brooks and Barrett.
Okay, thank you. Motion, sorry, Mr. Belusco?
Yes.
Mr. Marconi?
Yes.
Mrs. McBride?
No.
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
And Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Motion passes. Fourth is the Commonwealth Financing Authority, local share account related to the mayor's proposal on the Emergency Operations Center project. Motion, second, and vote.
Motion.
Second.
That was Mr. Marconi. Okay, Mr. Belusco.
Yes.
Mr. Marconi.
Yes.
Mrs. McBride.
No.
Mr. Brooks.
Yes.
Mr. Barrett.
Yes.
Motion passes. Fifth is the Commonwealth Financing Authority project proposed by the mayor related to City Hall renovations. Motion, second, and vote.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, that was Bill, and the second was Mr. Brooks. Mr. Belusco.
Yes.
Mr. Marconi.
No.
Mrs. McBride.
No.
Mr. Brooks.
Yes.
Mr. Barrett.
Yes.
Motion passes. The last item is not really a resolution. Again, just to remind you, it was just a vote of confidence from the Aggregated Trust Fund Board. Pardon? Yeah. Next is the LSA application regarding YMCA's virtual programming enhancement project. Motion, second, and vote.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Mike
Have it this time.
and Beth, Beth was the second? Mr. Belusco.
Yes.
Mr. Marconi.
Yes.
Mrs. McBride.
Yes.
Mr. Brooks.
Yes.
And Mr. Barrett.
Yes.
Motion passes. And the next one is local share account related to the Sherman Street Properties LLC Business Center Improvement Project.
Motion, Brooks.
Second.
Okay, motion was by, okay, Mr. Belusko,
Yes.
Mr. Marconi,
Yes.
Mrs. McBride,
Yes.
Mr. Brooks,
Yes.
and Mr. Barrett.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I believe that's it. Mrs. Payne, is that correct for all of the resolutions? Pardon me? Yes. Yes, that's going to be third in sequence. Okay, we'll now go into the voting on the ordinances. First is file of council number 14 of 2020 related to the garbage and refuse fees for recycling aluminum cans and ferrous containers. Motion, second, and vote.
Motion.
Mike, second.
Second.
Bill? Mr. Belusko?
Yes.
Mr. Marconi?
No.
Mrs. McBride?
No.
Mr. Brooks?
No.
Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Motion fails. Next is file of council number 15 of 2020 regarding annual rental and maintenance fees for persons within the city, amending chapter 30 of the Wilkes-Barre Code of Ordinances entitled Utilities. Motion, second, and vote.
Motion.
Bill, second.
I'll second.
Mike? Mr. Belusko?
Yes.
Mr. Marconi?
No.
Mrs. McBride?
No.
Mr. Brooks?
No.
And Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Motion fails. And finally, we have the ordinance adopting the mayor's proposed general fund budget. Motion, second, and vote.
Motion.
Mr. Barrett, second.
I'll second.
Mike? Mr. Belusko?
Yes.
Mr. Marconi?
No.
Mrs. McBride?
No.
Mr. Brooks?
No.
Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Motion fails also. Okay, and finally we have the adoption of minutes of authorities, boards, and commissions. Motion, second, and vote.
Motion approve.
Do we have?
Second. Bill was the motion, second.
Second on the
Adoption
minutes.
on the minutes.
Second.
Should listen to the speech.
Okay.
or did-
Mike?
Everybody left us.
Mr. Belusko?
Yes.
Mr. Marconi?
Yes.
Mrs. McBride?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Brooks?
Oops, yes.
And Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Council members, presentations by council members. Mr. Belusko.
I just want to apologize to the employees in the city. We did what we could to protect your job. I'm sorry it didn't pass. I wish you luck. And to everyone else, please have a happy and safe Thanksgiving. That's all, Mr. Barrett.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Marconi.
I do have a brief statement. First and foremost, my colleagues and I want to assure everyone we do not want any layoffs. We offered suggestions and met with the administration as recently as this past Tuesday. It appears that the administration just is not willing to budge. Our delinquent sewer and recycling fees as of early November, are approximately $600,000. How are residents going to be able to afford an even higher fee? Also, why are we addressing this now? It should have been addressed sooner, as other fees and fines should be addressed in a prompt time frame. I said before, we need to work together, and I'm willing to compromise some, as long as other parties are willing to as well. Overtime is approximately $900,000. I urge the administration to take a hard, close look at this. With that being said, I cannot raise fees by 100% on any resident in the city. That is all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. McBride?
Yeah, I do have a statement. But first I would like to say, just so the public is aware, since we're the only ones on camera on this side of the rail, that immediately after we voted down the budget, the mayor and his city administrator and assistant city administrator decided to leave because they didn't agree with our vote. So I just want the public to be aware that that's the type of leadership that we're dealing with right now. I know that I've made my stance on the budget abundantly clear, but there are some things that I want to share after our vote tonight. First, I want to share some statistics about Wilkes-Barre so that everyone can fully understand where I'm coming from. The median rent in our city is $730. The median homeowner costs with a mortgage is $1,020. The median income is $35,485. 27.5% of our population are living in poverty. Luzerne County has one of the highest median property taxes in the United States and is ranked 705th of the 3,143 counties in order of median property taxes. The average yearly property tax paid by Luzerne County residents amounts to about 3.02% of their yearly income. This does not include additional fees that are levied by individual municipalities. Now, I think that those who are elected to office and those who work for the local government can often find themselves surrounded by people in their friend group who also work for the local government. Of course, there is no way to actually quantify this information, but it has been my observation over the years that I've been following local politics that once elected, politicians have a tendency to do the opposite of what they've said they would do. They have a tendency to forget about who pays their salaries and those who have given them the opportunity to serve. Now back to the statistics that I had just mentioned. Once elected, politicians often forget about those statistics. They forget about every vote they solicited from the working class or those living in poverty. They forget about the kitchen tables they've sat around while canvassing. They forget about the neighborhoods that they only go in during campaign season. They forget that they were elected to represent all of their constituency and not just the privileged. Over the last few weeks, I've had numerous constituents reach out to me with their concerns regarding the potential fee increase. I had one woman reach out to me because she received a delinquency notice on a recycling bill from the city for $108, in which the notice said that a lien would be placed on her property if she did not pay the $108. She had to pull from her child's Christmas money, but she did it to avoid the lien. I had another woman reach out to me whose husband is in hospice, and she herself has to have surgery for breast cancer. They are suffering financially as a result. She begged me not to increase fees and stated that they are just trying to get by day to day as they have next to no income coming in. I cannot justify raising fees at the height of a global pandemic, and I will not balance this budget on the backs of the people who trusted me with their vote and their representation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In meetings with the administration over the last week, I was asked to keep an open mind on the budget, and I fully expect the same in return. There is an old quote that truth is the glue that holds governments together, compromise is the oil that makes governments go. It seems to me that my city council colleagues and I have been given a Sophie's choice without compromise. Every suggestion has been rejected. It's a frustrating place to be. Currently, there are so many people suffering, some quietly and some quite vocal due to COVID. I speak to anywhere between 5 to 10 constituents a day. Some days it's next to impossible to get off the phone and tend to my day job, but I know exactly what my constituents are going through. COVID has hit some people hard, and some small businesses very hard. I hear about domestic problems because people are quarantined at home. I hear about drug addiction and unemployment and people unable to pay their bills. But the hardest stories are the ones I hear about long-time senior citizen homeowners who just can't make ends meet. You already heard me tell you about one of my constituents who lives on $700 a month, of which 17% goes to paying her real estate taxes, leaving her with only $580 a month. And we want to add $8 a month to her expenses, not to mention other rising costs she will incur that her 1.3 cost of living adjustment will not satisfy. I have another constituent who told me she makes $956 a month, which barely covers her monthly expenses, but not her taxes, which she pays out of her savings. And another gentleman in his upper 70s told me that he has to work part-time just to make ends meet. Now, I fully understand that I may be in an echo chamber, hearing mostly from people who cannot afford the doubling of the proposed fee increase. I have had 3 calls from people supporting the budget, but they can all afford the increase. I represent some very poor sections of the city. Many widows who had dress factory jobs, people who had low-end jobs that never paid enough to build up a savings account because they lived check to check their whole life. So many just live on whatever Social Security pays them. It is my observation that those whose monthly check is under $1,000, people who live alone, can barely get by. They live on the edge, on the margin. Those that make above $1,500 and closer to $2,000 are better off, and those receiving above $2,000 a month tend not to have as much worries. I'm sure all of us here would like a win-win situation. I have an open mind, and I'm willing to compromise. I read that Scranton has reduced its annual budget for 2021 and exploring the use of its workers' comp trust fund to balance the budget. I suggested that as well, but was told no. I also see that Scranton has decided to roll over its delinquent fees into its tax bills to better recoup delinquent fees. I suggest Wilkes-Barre do the same to collect its $600,000 in delinquent recycling fees. Scranton's rationale stated it was easier to collect in a tax bill than a collection notice. In our budget, there is an increase of $400,000 in workers' comp and $900,000 for overtime. I believe we can save $1 million in these 3 areas and only have a modest increase in fees. Couple that with a discount program for our most vulnerable low-income senior citizen homeowners based on the guidelines of the Pennsylvania Tax Rebate Program. This is my compromise. These are my suggestions. You know, people look at the world in 2 ways, through the lens of scarcity or abundance. People fight over scarcity, over the crumbs. But if we make the pie bigger, we can all share in the abundance. It doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. It's sad when we think that when someone else gets something, that means you don't get it, and that creates anxiety and fear. And that fear is the basis of our dysfunction. People become bitter, resentful, and revengeful. People get trapped in the scarcity mindset. We need to move to an abundancy mindset. We need to increase the pie. Wilkes-Barre needs and deserves success. Sorry for getting so philosophical this evening. I still have an open mind and am willing to compromise to make our government go. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I don't have a lot to say. I don't have a prepared statement, but needless to say, there are going to be ramifications to this evening's vote. It is November 19th. We're a little over a month away. I actually have concerns about getting through this year. This year with a $4.5 million deficit. We're not in a good place right now. And we can blame COVID, we can blame the roof, we can blame whatever, but it is what it is. We're $4.5 million short budget. I know that when the price of oil goes up, I know I'm going to pay more when I go to the gas station and buy fuel for my cars. I just know it. This is the way it is. And unfortunately, fees and taxes do incrementally need to be raised at some time to cover those costs and expenses. The ramifications I'm looking at, just in conversations with the mayor, we've all heard them: decreased services, layoffs, Act 47, remember that? Distressed city status, $4.5 million in debt. Are we gonna make it through the year? We've been working with financial advisors. I know one of our callers said he's an expert. I don't know about that, whether that's true or not, but we've been working with experts. We're trying to do what is right, the least painful way. It's very easy to sit here and just simply turn everything down. A lot of great suggestions came from all of the council members here, everything that we've talked about, whether looking at the pilot program differently, whether to talk to the unions about concessions or collective bargaining issues. I don't know if any of you have ever sat in on some of those, but they're not as easy as you may think. So we do have, the city has a lot of work ahead of us. I do appreciate all the ideas, but again, we are 6 weeks away. If we make it through this year, we'll be very fortunate without layoffs, let alone what's going to happen next year. So I know Mr. Belisco has mentioned his concerns. I concur with that. I would love to sit here and just say no, but we do have a $4 million gap, and I haven't heard anything here that's going to make up that for next year, let alone what's going to happen this year. And that's all I have to say on that. Okay, I know we have some callers that want to call in.
All right, please state your name and where you're calling from. Hello?
Another one in queue. If anybody's watching and wants to call in, this is the public comment portion of the meeting.
All right, please state your name and where you're calling from.
Yeah, it's Bob Kalabowski calling back again. And please, I want every council person there to know, especially Beth, I am not personally upset with you. It's the issue, not your personality. You have to understand, we are in a tough situation. And the unions, from what I understand, want to give concessions. But I'm just asking, are you going to do anything? Are you going to give the concessions at all? That's what I want to know. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hello? You can hear me? It's a little bit hard doing this on the telephone. And that was a really nice speech that Jim gave, and I want to thank him for that. And just so you know, Jim, what the taxpayers should also know, you're probably one of the highest paid clerks in Pennsylvania. And I think when it comes time for concessions, I think that you should give about 20% of your salary, because I think you're making almost $100,000 a year in salary or close to it. So if you gave 20% up, council gives up the benefits, and everybody else gives something back, things won't be that bad on the taxpayers. So I guess I'm going to wait and listen to see if you are going to give anything back. And I mean, I feel sorry for the citizens for what's going on. But don't forget, during the Layton administration, we had fees raised up, I believe, 240%. Everything they could possibly raise, they raised. And also to remind people, taxpayers, we hired PFM in the early 2000s when Layton took over and paid them $250,000 a year or $250,000 for 5 years. And all they ended up doing was jacking up all our fees and everything they could possibly raise up. And we paid them $250,000, and I think we're still paying them, and we're still not in any better shape. So I'm going to hang up, and I want to see what council people are going to, other council people that are going to give something up. And Beth, it's nothing against you, it's nothing against Mike, but how many people could afford $600 to pay you $600 a week for health care and whatever it's costing to pay Mr. Belisco, who's probably one of the most successful garage owners in South Wilkes-Barre? Why should we have to pay his health care? So I'm going to hang up, and I want to see what you are going to give up. And also, I'd like to thank Mr. Marconi for how nice you are to give that $3,600 a year back. And I think it shows a lot of your character. It was very nice of you. And I hope the rest of your council people do it, especially Mr. Brooks, Mr. Belisco, and Beth. So I'll wait and hear what your answers are. Thank you.
I'll make a comment.
Go ahead.
I don't want to be repetitive regarding the benefits and salary and things like that for council. I don't know if Mr. Kalabowski is aware, but I did myself take a 10% pay cut. I'm not taking the pension, and yes, I did have to take the health care. if Mr. Kaldabaski had mentioned that some of the unions want to offer some concessions. If they would like to offer some concessions, then now's the time to step up, because we've been asking for that for the last month now. So it doesn't have to be, as Sam Troy said, an either-or situation. We have been advocating for different things that the unions can do so that no one has to be laid off. And not just things that the union can do, but also different things where the administration can cut back as well. We've offered several solutions, and as Mr. Brooks said, we are willing to compromise on that, and Mr. Marconi. So that's all I have to say about the union concessions. In regards to PFM being our financial advisor, I've been vocal about some of my concerns with them being our financial advisor in the past, as it's pretty much well known that they work at the will of the administration and the mayor. So I think it would be definitely helpful, and I know that some of my colleagues are interested in this as well, in exploring hiring another financial advisor as opposed to PFM, so that we could get an honest, unbiased look at our city's finances and different options that we have. So that's all I have to say.
Bill, if I may.
Go ahead.
Mr. Katabaski, at this point in time, I don't intend on giving anything back. It's a compensation that's been supplied to me by the city, and I appreciate it. But at this time, I will not be lessening or giving back. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Please state your name and where you're calling from.
Matthew Scott, Wilkes-Barre City. And this is directed towards Mr. Marconi. Mr. Marconi, you had said that you would like to see the overtime fees cut and DPW do more with less. When I was hired 14 years ago, I was number 48th on the seniority list. Right now, we have 36 employees with the city. It's just enough to man the vehicles that the city provides us to provide the services for the taxpayers. We're in the four elements. We get sick, we have vacation, we have sick time. Any of us get sick, call off sick, we have vacation guys off. Therefore, now a truck is down. Now that's one truck less to provide the services the city needs. I would like to know if you actually know what our job entails, and I've seen it firsthand. To ask us to cut more of us away and do more with less is it's not going to work, and people are going to get laid off, and taxpayers are going to lose services. We're back this week because we had last Wednesday off. Today was a double pickup. Yesterday was a double pickup. We're behind on yard waste, and this is the last week with just what we have, the bare minimum. So to take more of us away and do more with less, you can't do it. And to say about cutting overtime, there's a handful of us that are senior guys that stay. And it's not about the money, it's about providing and doing the right things for the city, because we have homes here. We are taxpayers. That's all. I would just like him to sit and think about that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
May I?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to make it very clear. I did not direct the do more with less to anybody in the city of Wilkes-Barre. That is something that the company that I work for had told us to do about 2 or 3 years ago. I do not expect anyone again. I do not expect anyone from the city to do more with less. That is, again, that's just something that was a directive in the company that I work for. I just want to make that 100% clear. I think the DPW guys, the firemen, the police, our health department, everyone here at City Hall, I know they work hard. I think they do a great job. As far as the overtime, $900,000 approximately. It's not directed, again, at DPW. It's not directed at any specific department. That is a whole. I'm not saying to cut anywhere. I'm not sure where to cut. I think the administration needs to look at that. Again, I just want to reiterate, I am not telling anyone in the city to do more with less. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
May I make a comment? I know that the majority of his presentation was directed at Mr. Marconi, but regarding the overtime, there's something else that I was made aware of this week that I think the public and council members need to know if they're not already aware of this. So I was told this week by two separate people, actually, a current city employee and a former city employee, that oftentimes if a snowstorm occurs on a Saturday, DPW will wait to go out until after midnight so that it's Sunday and they get double time. So that's often why we see trucks coming up our streets at 1 a.m., 2 a.m. For the sake of double time. I was also told that it is very routine for certain DPW workers to call off on a Friday and work a certain number of hours the following week so that they could get excessive overtime and often double time as well. So when we're asking for concessions, we're not asking for these obscene concessions. We're asking for things like this to stop. We're asking for things like this to stop so that we could save the taxpayers money and so that hopefully City Council is never put in a position like this again. Because it's been going on for way too long and the buck needs to stop here. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Please state your name and where you're calling from. Hello? Please state your name and where you're calling from.
Mike from Mayflower. I'm calling to ask people who voted no, who's going to plow our streets now during the wintertime? Since everybody from DPW is going to be guys getting laid off, who's going to plow the streets? Can't hire anybody because you're laying somebody off from the union. And maybe Beth Gilbert should give up her salary. Also, you guys gave Dave Lewis a $30,000 raise. Nobody knows about that. That'll be in the paper. Is there any reason why you guys are going to hire other people to plow our streets or what?
Is that all?
Thank you. Can anybody that voted no answer that question? Who's going to plow our streets?
Okay, do you have anything else? Okay, thank you.
Can I respond?
Sure.
I would say if he's concerned about who's going to plow the streets, to ask the mayor since he's the one advocating for layoffs and not council. Thank you.
Give it a minute or two.
Hi, Linda Joseph, Wilkes-Barre. Can you hear me? Okay. I just want to say that I am really shocked and disappointed that the mayor walked out of that meeting and didn't stay to listen to the rest of public comments, because it's just the leadership that is really disappointing to me. So it's just, to me, I'm sorry, but it's childish, and that's really too bad for us. The other thing I wanted to say is Mr. Murtha called in earlier, and he referenced that the $100 increase in the fee was a one-time increase just for next year. And I don't remember seeing that. I was just wondering if council heard that or was told that by the mayor, since we can't ask him ourselves. Was that your understanding, that this was going to be a one-time fee, which under our circumstances, I can't believe how that would even happen. As Mr. Barrett said, we have a $4 million deficit in 2020. And what is the administration doing in that respect to get us through this year without, the 2020 being an issue at this point? So those were just some things, but really disappointed in the mayor and the administration who walked out. Thank you.
I'll make a comment. I never heard of the one-time increase either, temporary. So that was all new to me. And if I did hear that, I think that could have changed the level of negotiations and discussions.
And as far as the one-time fee goes, I think it's important to remember that that would again require council vote to change the ordinance back to the lower fee.
Correct. It would.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Please state your name and where you're calling from.
Hello?
Yes, please state your name and where you're calling from.
Yeah, Bill Murtha from Wilkes-Barre.
Go ahead, sir.
Hi, this is Bill Murtha again. I'm pretty sure that next year it would require council to vote on the budget again. So I would only have to assume that this budget with the $100 increase would be for this year. I don't know why anyone on council could have the opinion that this goes on forever and ever. Obviously, you'll get a chance to vote on it again next year. I would also like to support the position of the gentleman who called and said, who's going to plow the streets? I mean, what is the plan here? I'm extremely disappointed in council members who voted against this, and I hope everyone who needs services from the city who's unable to obtain them for next year is wise enough to call each of these council members and ask them to fill that void. Pick the recycle. Maybe you can come to their home, pick their recycling up, and take it to the DPW yard. I think you're being extremely irresponsible, and it's extremely wise to put in place a one-time fee. This budget comes up again next year. If you don't want to vote for it next year, don't vote for it next year. But I think it's unwise to not fill the void for 1 year when the city is in a deficit because of extra costs caused by COVID. Obviously, it's not going to do any good to talk to you. Everyone on council who's voted against it is far too concerned to keep their voters' base and say, I'm the person who didn't raise your taxes. Please vote for me again. I'm ashamed of you all. Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment that Mr. Murphy, that's not what I said. I'm looking for a compromise. I've just admitted that I would increase the fee if I have a compromise. I've given suggestions on how I think we can pay for that compromise, but we're getting nowhere. As I said, we were given a Sophie's choice without compromise. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Go ahead.
Again, as far as lowering the fee back to what it is currently, I'd like to ask Mr. Murtha when he has ever heard of a municipality voting to lower a fee. It doesn't happen. Once it's raised, it's raised. And as far as his comment about essentially representing my constituency, you're damn right I'm representing my constituency, and that's not going to change. I've been on here for 5 years, and I've done that every single day that I've been in office. And I can lay my head down at night knowing that I'm doing the best I can to represent the citizens in my district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir, go ahead.
Mr. Murtha, I just want to let you know too, I also made a statement about compromise earlier this evening. Again, we all need to work together, and I am willing to compromise. As Mr. Brooks had said, and Ms. Gilbert McBride, we all came up with several ideas, and everything was shot down. Again, we all spoke about compromise. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Please state your name and where you're calling from.
My name is Patricia, and I'm calling from Wilkes-Barre.
Go ahead.
And I would like to express my deep concern for council, particularly the 3 people who voted for against this budget, and particularly my disappointment in to interject the rumor and innuendo of DPW waiting to plow streets. Don't they have management that makes decisions? I think that's highly unprofessional. If you have proof of this, bring it forward.
She's still speaking?
Yeah, she's still speaking, you can't hear her.
That's all I have to say.
You know, my experience, I worked for the city for many years, like Mr. Hirschberger and a few others. And I know that, having worked night shifts and everything, I know that the drivers don't decide when they're coming out. I do know that management decides. I would often call and say, when are they coming out? And they would say, we're going to wait for it to slow up a little bit because we're not going to get anywhere with it now. And it's Saturday night. They'd wait till snow stops or something. It's not the laborers that make the decision about when to call out. It's the management that does. So that caller was correct with that. Maybe it could be conceived to be arbitrarily done to increase overtime, but you know, it snows Saturday night, Sunday morning, whatever. And that's why that $900,000 is so difficult to do away with. I mean, we're not a Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 operation. This is a 7-day-a-week, 365 days a year, whether the river's up, whether it's snowing, whatever it might be. And I'm just talking just about DPW, let alone fire services and police and all the other reasons why we would have overtime occasions. It's very difficult to budget for it, and I think sometimes we probably under budget in a lot of ways and hope for the best. We hope for a mild winter. Last winter was great. There's no guarantee that this winter is not going to be just the opposite.
Please state your name and where you're calling from.
Hello?
State your name and where you're calling from.
Sam Troy, Wilkes-Barre.
Go ahead, Mr. Troy.
My internet was out in the last, I wasn't able to connect. I would just like somebody to fill me in as to how the vote went on the budget. Did the budget pass or fail? Can somebody tell me?
The vote on the budget
Tailor
failed,
my
sir.
comments appropriately.
It failed, Mr. Troy.
It failed. Well, I want to congratulate the people who voted against the budget and the people who didn't, who voted for the budget. I hope that you people will see the light. I think the right thing has been done. I don't know how they vote on the bond issue went, and I was hopeful that the council would proceed with caution on that. I don't know if anybody explained to anyone after I hung up what the risks are in that. But let me just say this about the process. The way the mayor presented this budget as an either-or situation, which I indicated before, I think was not healthy for a lot of reasons. And I am appalled that I heard from, I'm not going to name any names, but I heard from certain council people that there were threats. I don't know if there were bodily threats, physical threats, but there was, maybe if I put it more modestly, there was an attempt to arm twist. I don't know if any of the council people want to come forward with this and indicate what actually happened there and be specific. But I was told that that was the case, that certain employees confronted or indicated that their vote on this issue had to come around for a yes vote, or there was going to be consequences. Now, I'm not saying there were death threats. I don't think anything like that surfaced. But they were threats nevertheless. This is not the way that democracy should work. Democracy still exists on a municipal level. I think we all would agree with that. It may not be as sophisticated as we want it to be, but it exists nevertheless. For that sort of thing to happen, you know, it's interesting. I just want to point this out to council. I saw a program on PBS the other night about the rise of Adolf Hitler in Germany. And of course, Hitler had to run for office in 1932. He wasn't dictator yet. But the brown shirts, the paramilitary group that he employed, did the same kind of intimidation and threats against people to not vote for the other parties who were running. Now, I find that appalling that this can happen in this day and age. And look, I don't know how widespread this was. I don't know what people did it. But I'll tell you that should be investigated by you people. I don't know if I'm the first one to bring this up. But it should be investigated by you people or the mayor, and appropriate action should be taken. Because that is not ethical, that is not right, that is anti-democratic, and that is also, as far as I'm concerned, illegal. I don't know if anything is going to be done. I hope something will be done about that. I want to just close with my comments that, again, I appreciate it, but I assume the vote was 3-2. I appreciate the support of the people who did vote for this, vote against this budget, that is. And I would hope that council would follow my suggestion and appoint some sort of ad hoc committee or some sort of task force so that citizens could participate more fully and give advice. And I think I did overhear some suggestions by Ms. Gilbert about concessions from unions and that sort of thing, which I think is integral to solving this fiscal crisis. But the bottom line is, under these circumstances with the pandemic and the situation in the city, the fiscal situation, the financial situation of many of the residents here struggling to survive and put food on the table, it is absolutely wrong to try to increase fees at this point. And I'm glad the council came around to their senses, at least in that respect. And I would hope there would be some investigation or some sort of hearing on the unfortunate thing that I just mentioned. I was just taken back by that totally. I just couldn't believe it. But I appreciate any comments anybody could make on that. And again, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody specifically. But for that sort of thing to happen, I would think everybody would agree, whether you're for the budget or against it. It's startling. It's just wrong. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I can expand a bit on what Mr. Troy was alluding to. Back probably immediately after the mayor had announced his budget, and it was clear that my colleagues and I weren't supportive of the budget, I myself received a voicemail from someone who was presumed to be a DPW worker based on the language that he had used in his voicemail. And he made a veiled threat. It wasn't clear if it was bodily harm or what it meant, but it is in the hands of the police department at this point.
Okay. As it should be.
Please state your name and where you're calling from.
Hi, I'm calling on behalf of the DPW. I would like to know who you guys expect to plow streets now, and I would like to know if you guys actually know what we do, because I think you guys just think we just pick up the garbage and recycling when we do a lot more than that. Nobody has came down to us and talked to us and asked us what we need, how we're doing, and what we actually do. Are you guys going to come down and talk to us and explain to our families why we can't put food on the table no more?
I'd like to make
Nobody does. Nobody ever answers our questions. Nobody ever comes down to us. The mayor's doing the best he could, and you guys just cost a lot of us our jobs. Now nobody's going to be able to plow the streets, pick up your garbage, recycling, fix your potholes, cut trees when they fall down, clean up the water when it storms. Hopefully somebody can come down tomorrow and talk to us and tell us what's going on.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name's Jason Carr from Saylorsburg, Pennsylvania. I called before and I got cut off, but I would just like to congratulate the 3 council people that voted down this budget tonight. I wish Mayor Brown had not stormed out of the meeting so he could answer the question as to who is going to plow the streets of Wilkes-Barre. I know that's a major concern for everyone, but I'm sure the job will get done somehow. That's George Brown's responsibility as mayor. But walking out of a meeting seems to be extremely childish. I want to congratulate specifically, well, first of all, I would like to publicly apologize to John Marconi. I have been critical of some of his votes earlier, but when it came down to crunch time, it looks like John stood up for the taxpayers. He stood up for all 41,000 residents of the city of Wilkes-Barre. As well, I would like to apologize to Mr. Brooks. 2 years ago, I came to multiple council meetings. I've attended about maybe 85% of council meetings over the last 2.5 years. And I've seen actually Mr. Brooks grow as a councilman over that time period. And with all of his suggestions that he's had, the points that he made tonight are very impressive. There's a very smart girl that works as the mayor of Scranton, and she balanced her budget amidst this pandemic, and that's a resource that the city should look into. As I've said over the last couple of months, it seems as though Mayor Brown is overwhelmed, and his actions tonight probably substantiate that point. It's actually embarrassing that he did that, but that's who he is. Again, Mr. Brooks, congratulations on your vote. Stand firm for all the citizens of Wilkes-Barre. I greatly appreciate it. I'm sure everyone else does within the city, especially those on fixed incomes that can't afford it. I don't know why the city's not looking at raising fees on landlords. We make enormous amounts of money in the city of Wilkes-Barre. Between the price of the purchase price of the house that we purchase and the amounts of rent that we charge. Double our fees that you charge us currently. I'd be glad to pay that. As well, people continue to bring up the overtime issue. It's a dirty secret in the city of Wilkes-Barre. The reason why there's so much overtime allocated is for the police and the firemen and others that work in the city to utilize the overtime to pad their pensions when they're about to retire. And that's one of the reasons why the overtime is built into the budget. And that's why the city's bankrupt. We know the city's headed to Act 47. That's a reality. There's no way out of it. The city almost has $250 million of debt between unfunded pension obligations and general obligation debt. That's a reality. There's no way out of it. That's the only bargaining tool that the mayor has, is going into Act 47 as leverage with the unions. I know that. So please, Mr. Brooks, Mr. Marconi, and Ms. Gilbert, please help the mayor, because right now it looks as if he's in a bad position. He doesn't know what to do. So with your suggestions, which I think are many and correctly advised to the mayor, work with him to implement them and spare the city Act 47 and spare the citizens any additional taxes. Thank you so much.
I do know the mayor meets regularly with other mayors in Lackawanna and Luzerne County. They're all going through a lot of the same concerns, and I think that's a very progressive and forward move. I'm glad that they do that. You know, learn from each other's experiences and come up with solutions that work for all of us. So, I'm not familiar with Scranton's tax base or where they're at with everything, but I do know that I believe Act 47 is not something that they're not aware of. And Hazelton the same. So it's not some place that we want to go. There are a lot of downsides to that. So.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Pardon me?
May I speak?
Sure, of course.
Just, I was going to mention this anyway. I know we brought up the overtime, this about $900,000. I just want everyone to know that I do realize that there has to be some overtime. I understand that. I'm not specifying any department, to have their overtime cut. Absolutely not. I'm talking, when I speak to $900,000, I'm talking as a whole. And that's why I had asked the administration just to take a look at that. I just wanted everyone to be clear that I'm not asking to cut $900,000 in overtime. What I'm asking is, I think it's high. I think my two colleagues feel it's a little high. And I'm just asking just to take a look at that. Like I said, we do need the overtime. I just think this $900,000 is just a little excessive. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any mail? Nothing? Yeah, well,
Yes. There is one non-agenda item that was called in. And it says, "Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Shai Rodriguez, and I am the founder of the Child Poolers. I'm a full-time mother, a part-time healthcare worker, and an entrepreneur who is trying to make a difference. I just want to help people. I've been made aware of new COVID relief efforts, and it has been recommended that I reach out. I have attached a letter that explains the highlights of my business with the intention to send a copy to Mayor George C. Brown with an application for appointment to a City of Wilkes-Barre Authority, Board, or Commission, / Citizens COVID-19 Financial Assistance Committee." So it looks like she's applying for that committee.
thank you. Okay, no other letters, calls, Kathy? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.